back to the Rise and Fall of Studio series. This is part 2 in the ongoing series where we document what happened to this toy line. So now we are going to start with where we left off, with that being 2020, and let's see how far we get this time. 49 is another 2007 Bumblebee, but this time it's a new mold using his 2007 Camaro design. This figure looks a lot better than the previous one, though it still does borrow some transformation steps from 01/27 and the Dark of the Moon Bumblebee, strangely enough. He has his battle mask deployed, but the head can be swapped with 01 or 27. And, well, the transformation is different and a lot more complex, but I don't find it very frustrating personally, and I didn't hear of any breakages. So overall, I'd say this Bumblebee is the best one in the line so far. Despite 50 being a big number, we got a very obscure character, that being Hot Rod from the last night in his World War II look. The figure looks pretty good in the robot mode, though it is basically identical to the World War II Bumblebee figure, and all pros and cons are the same, so pick which one you like more. One is another Dark of the Moon Decepticon, and a big name in the brand. It's Soundwave. Now, Soundwave looks amazing with all his silver paint applications and does look very accurate to the film. Instead of coming with traditional weaponry, he comes with Laserbeak, which is a nice little character-specific accessory. Transformation is sadly not very fun, as a lot of stuff is very hard to feed through tight clearances, but it's not the worst one ever, and honestly, overall, he does look really good in both modes, just sadly the transformation's a little bad. 52 is another character from Revenge of the Fallen, or should I say characters, as we got RC, Chromia, and Alita 1 in a 3-pack. The figures are marked as a deluxe because they are tiny. Now, they do include stands to help them stand up because they have wheel feet. Sadly, that's not going to help the quality control much, as they like to fall off a lot. Not on their stands per se, but their ball joints don't stay on, which makes transformation a nightmare, as sadly it's very complex for their size. I should also mention they have a supposed combined mode, but it's not listed in the instructions, and it looks like that. So yeah, if you get these, leave them on display in robot mode in like one pose. But honestly, I don't recommend them at all. 3 is the next Constructicon piece, and it is Mixmaster from Revenge of the Fallen. He looks very good and is very, very lanky, but that's accurate to the film design. He can form the cannon mode that he used in the Battle of Egypt, which is cool. Transformation is pretty simple, a lot more simple than his old Voyager toy from Revenge of the Fallen, which was described as feeling like origami. And he can also form Devastator's head mode, and it looks really cool in it, so yeah. I definitely recommend him, especially if you're going after Devastator, because then you'll need him. 54 was the most hyped figure in the lineup to this point, and that is the final 2007 member, Megatron. The figure looks very good in robot mode, having almost no kibble whatsoever. The one slight inaccuracy is the chest, that is, it is reused from the Revenge of the Fallen figure. Transformation is very, very fun and very simple despite this design, and overall this figure is really good and might be the best Voyager in the line. 55 was our first leader class of the year, and it's another Constructicon. This time it is Scavenger. The figure looks really good in robot mode and very accurate, though he does have no legs to stand on, so you have to be very careful with posing him. Transformation's a little confusing, but not overly hard to figure out once you get it done first few times, and he combines into Devastator's upper torso, which looks very cool. So overall, I'd recommend him as a nice fun figure, even if you don't want him for Devastator. 6 was one of the most hyped ones for me personally, as it's Dark of the Moon Shockwave, my favorite Transformers design ever. The figure looks basically perfect, with zero kibble issues whatsoever. He comes with little minifigures of Wheelie and Brain, since he's a little smaller than the average leader. He also comes with a Nest Paratrooper that can plug onto his shoulder if you feel like it. Transformation is surprisingly borrowed from 13 Megatron, but actually fixes the leg problem, making this actually a lot more fun to transform than that figure, and overall, I'd say this might be the best leader class for me personally, but I highly recommend you get one. 7 is back to the Nightverse with another Bumblebee variant. This time is called Off-Road Bumblebee. This figure is based on his first look he has in the movie, which he sports for only about 5 minutes when he lands on Earth. Figure has a nice look to it overall, though, and does include a cool feature where you can plug the blade included on 18 Bumblebee on his forearm, which is a nice bonus. Transformation is very good, actually, with no frustrations at all, which is a really rare commodity for Bumblebees. And overall, I'd say this is the best Bumblebee in the line, even beating out the 49 Bumblebee. But that one is still good too, but this is way better. 58 is the first of the Dark of the Moon Wreckers, and that being the one called Roadbuster. Figure looks very good, though he is missing some paint apps for some of the advertisements on his NASCAR mode. on the robot mode, but that's okay because not all ads would show up on a figure like this. You can't expect that. The transformation is apparently pretty alright, though some roof tabs have some trouble holding together, but overall I'd say he's a decent deluxe, and it is nice to get some more Dark of the Moon Autobots, though he is very expensive, so I'd recommend you waiting for a reissue, hopefully. 59 is another deluxe figure, and this time it's from the Nightverse, surprisingly enough. It's the main villain of the film, Shatter, in her jet form this time. Figure looks much better than the original one ever did, and she has really good posing and an accurate head. Transformation is also very fun and simple, but really fun to flip back and forth between. There's no flaws overall. Shatter might be my favorite deluxe in the line. She's just that good. She excels in pretty much every aspect of a Transformers figure. 60 represents the final of our Constructicon lens, sort of. This one's called Scrapper. Now, the figure looks very accurate to the concept design I just showed you, as this character is never actually seen that well in the film. Transformation looks alright. I can't really judge it too much as I don't own the figure, but I will say the hand mode does look very good, and overall I'd say he's a good looking figure and I would like to own him one day. 61 is another figure that I really wish I owned, and is another main villain from the films. This time it is Dark of the Moon Sentinel Prime. The figure looks very cool, though is sadly way too dark in the plastic compared to how the color is supposed to look on the film. Now, in the instructions mark him as an Autobot, but the box marks him as a Decepticon, which is a nice nod to his role in the movie. The transformation doesn't seem too bad, though from what I can tell, some stress marks are known to show up on the figure, so do be careful. But overall, this figure looks very cool, and I really wish I owned one, so I hope they re-release him for the film's 15th anniversary next year. C2 is another Revenge of the Fallen cast member, and this time it's Soundwave, based on his satellite look from the movie. Now, in the film, Soundwave only looks like a satellite, so the figure had to invent a robot mode for him. But as for the satellite mode, it's not the best, though it does include a nice flight stand, which is a cool accessory. But the robot mode that they invented actually looks really cool. But sadly, transformation to get from robot to satellite is very bare bones and boring. But overall, I'd say just get him for the robot mode, as it is a very cool look to him. E3 is our second of the Dark of the Moon Wreckers, and my personal favorite. This time it's Top Spin. Figure looks very amazing and film accurate, though one thing to keep in mind is that the rubber pipes on his collarbone have brittle plastic below, which can break easily if not handled carefully. Transformation is very fun and stress-free, which is a nice change of pace for a lot of these Babyverse designs, though some parts are reused from the Roadbuster figure. Overall, this is my personal favorite record they made, and it's one to keep an eye out for, and hopefully they gets re-released along with the other two records. 4 is surprisingly another Bumblebee movie figure, which is very nice since they barely got any before, and this time it's a more obscure character, that being Cliffjumper. The figure looks pretty accurate to how we see the character, though he isn't damaged like he was in that one scene. His vehicle mode is not shown in the film, but since his CGI model is based on the one Bumblebee had on Cybertron, he uses that vehicle mode. Transformation isn't the best, and there are some clear plastic tabs that can break very easily, but overall I'd say he's a good figure. 5 keeps the Bumblebee movie train going, this time giving us Blitzwing. The robot mode looks very cool and accurate, though sadly his chest does not like to tab in very well. But one does make up for it with this cool gimmick with his hand where he can hold Bumblebee by the throat, specifically the off-road Bumblebee, to be seen accurate. Now, transformation is sadly a chore due to the quality control, but overall, it's a good Voyager, but I'd recommend leaving him in robot mode, as that's where he shines the most. 56 is technically our final Constructicon in the line, and that is the one called Overload. Now, Overload is never actually seen in robot mode in Revenge of the Fallen, but the figure does look pretty accurate to the concept art. The transformation is pretty tough, but it's a leader class, so it kind of makes sense. Now, he does form the crotch of Devastator, but sadly, there is no Wrecking Ball, so I'm very sad too. So overall, he's a pretty good figure, but he is not the final Constructicon. 67 is the official final Constructicon, and that is that of Skipjack. If he looks familiar to you, that is because he is a repaint of 37 Rampage, but now yellow. The reason for this is that Devastator has a yellow foot, not a red one. So if you get both, you'll have Rampage for display and Skipjack for Devastator. 68 is a Target exclusive, and it is our final wrecker, that being Leadfoot. He looks exactly like he does in the film and is very bulky for a deluxe. He comes with a dog accessory, which is very unique. Now, the transformation seems to be decent enough as I don't own him since he was a very expensive figure online. But with him, that completes our record team, and yeah, what a very solid set. 69 is the final figure of the year, and it's only fitting to end the peak year of Studio Series with Devastator. This figure is a box set version of the other Constructicons, giving you all of them in one set. As such, the figure looks pretty alright, though it's a bit too up straight for how Devastator is supposed to be in the film. But if you'd missed out on any of the Constructicons previously, this is a great way to get them, and it does give you all of them in one box set, finally giving you Devastator as a whole, which they've been building to since the beginning of last year. 2020 in general was great. It felt like everything got attention, with the slight exception of Age of Extinction, but besides that one film, everything was accounted for, and it was the year the Bumblebee movie film got more love, but sadly, once you reach peak, you must hit a downfall, and that all begins with 2021. 2021 begins with 86? What? We were on 70. And wait, what's this? 8601. Is this a subline? That can't make any sense. Okay, which movie is it from? The Transformers the movie. That's that G1 movie. Why is it now only in the line? This line was meant to only be about live action so far. If not, then why did it take 3 years to introduce this into the line? It's also not like G1 had zero representation in modern toy lines, because the previous year we just got the Earthrise toy line, which was very G1 accurate, and the current year that this 86 subline was introduced, we're getting the Kingdom toy line, which, while yes, is a lot of Beast Wars figures, over half the line is still G1. In fact, one of the major players of the G1 movie, that being Galvatron, is only in the Kingdom line and wouldn't be added to 86 until years later, where we see that it's the exact same figure, just with slightly different paint. This line also gave us a full set of G1 Dinobots, which is cool, but we just got some previously in 2018, which was the same year we got Bayverse Grimlock, and ever since then we've had no other Bayverse Dinobots, but the G1 set had two in the time that we only got one Bayverse figure of Grimlock and no other Dinobots, so yeah, that's kind of unfair. Alright, well, 86 is just a subline, so I'm sure the main Studio Series portion still has a decent amount of figures, so let's see how many we got that aren't G1 figures. Oh, 9 out of 19, that's only 47%. Oh, but wait. One figure got delayed and was supposed to come out earlier. All right, so 10 out of 20, 50%. Oh my, all right. This is not much of a subline. That's just kind of half the line, but I hope these figures are good. 70 is another Bumblebee movie figure, and this time it's one from the Cybertron scene. It's B-127 himself, or Bumblebee, as he's known on Earth. Figure is a yellow cliff jumper, which is alright, though it does feature a new head, which does have the battle mask deployed, though if you own Off-Road Bumblebee, the heads are swappable, and in fact a variant came out later that does have the unmasked head. Overall, though, if you own one mold, there's not really a reason to get both unless you really like the just building out the Bumblebee movie cast. 71 is another first-time character. This time it is Dark of the Moon Dino, also known as Mirage. The figure looks very, very accurate in robot mode, though sadly the vehicle mode is not a Ferrari due to the Ferrari license being very hard to acquire for toy figures. The transformation is pretty simple, though it can be a little confusing at times, but overall the figure looks very nice, and this was the first Dino figure, ever. So I highly recommend you pick one up if you can find it. 72 is another Bumblebee movie figure and based on the Cybertron scene again. Anyway, it's Starscream. This figure has a very similar look to 65 Blitzwing, but while they do have a similar transformation steps, no parts are reused. Sadly, that also means the head, which looks very bad. Figure is built better than Blitzwing, but doesn't suffer from any QC issues. The transformation, though, is pretty good. Though the Cybertronian jet mode looks kind of weird, but it makes sense since it's Cybertronian. Overall, pretty good figure and definitely better than Blitzwing. 73 is another character from Revenge of the Fallen. This time it is the Decepticon Grindor. Now, Grindor here looks very similar to 08 Blackout, and that is because in the film they share the exact same model. However, Grindor is canonically much bigger than Blackout, which is a problem because Studio Series is about accuracy. This kind of reminds me of how in the 90s, Cheetor and Tigatron were repaints of each other, but the same year the Grindor came out, Kingdom, Tigatron, and Cheetor came out, and we see that Tigatron is much taller than Cheetor like he should be. Beyond that, though, Grindor does have a lot of improvements over Blackout, namely better wrists. Now they can rotate and have hinged fingers. He also replaces the Scorponok minifigure with Ravage, which is very cool. So overall, I'd say Grindor is a very big improvement over Blackout, but still, it annoys me to see that the G1 affiliated stuff like Beast Wars is able to get, improvements for screen accuracy's sake, but Studio Series can't. 74 is another repaint again. This time it's Revenge of the Fallen Bumblebee. This figure is identical to 49 with some new parts of the car mode and some paint, but the transformation is unaffected. The big new thing with this release is that a new minifigure of Sam, who is the first human since the Paratrooper with Shockwave, and does make this figure better than 49 to me. So yeah, if you want Sam or prefer this color scheme, then I recommend him. 75 is our most obscure character yet, that being Jolt from Revenge of the Fallen, a character who has literally 20 seconds of screen time. The figure looks pretty accurate to that brief clip I just showed. That's our best look at him in robot mode. Though, like I said, some debate if it's accurate or not, because we don't get the best look. As for accessories, he has this unique way of swapping out his thumb to replace it with his electro whips, which sadly are very static, which kind of sucks, as you can't really pose them the best. Transformation is pretty bad, as he is mostly a shell former, because his entire vehicle is on the back, but the vehicle mode does look very nice. So overall, I'd say Jolt is pretty decent, because he does feature good articulation, and is such a nice character to include in this line since he's so obscure, so I'm just happy he exists. 76 is from the Bumblebee movie again, and oh my, from the opening scene on Cybertron too. Wow, it's Thrust. Now Thrust here is basically a repaint of Starscream, though they thankfully gave him Blitzwing's head instead of Starscream's head, which is a big improvement because that Starscream head was awful. They also gave him a nose cone on the top of his head to make him look more like Thrust. Now, what's interesting is that this figure is not based on G1 Thrust, unlike every other Bumblebee movie fake character who had a G1 look. This instead is based on his Armada design, which I much prefer and is why I bought him. But you probably don't need to buy them unless you collect the Starscream repaints. 77 is another Bumblebee movie figure. Weird. Alright, and it's Nest Bumblebee. What is Nest Bumblebee? This figure is just a repaint of 57 Bumblebee, but now he includes the Sam minifigure from 74 Bumblebee. And also, it's called Nest Bumblebee, but Nest doesn't exist until Revenge of the Fallen, and Sam isn't in the Bumblebee movie. So this figure makes no sense, and I honestly don't recommend it. I don't think it looks good in gray. And honestly, the only reason to get this is if you really need the mold. But if you don't, skip it. 78 is another Revenge of the Fallen repaint. This time it is that of Sideswipe. Sideswipe was previously number 29 in the line, and that was of his Dark of the Moon self, which did not have a roof in the car mode, but the Revenge of the Fallen one does, and as such, the figure sadly has a bigger backpack. But thankfully, the transformation remains mostly the same, and the figure has much better paint in robot mode. So overall, I'd say if you get to pick one, get 78 because of the better paint in the robot mode. 79 is an exclusive, and that is of High Octane Bumblebee from Age of Extinction. Now, the figure is only sold in a 2-pack with Age of Extinction Stinger in the Buzzworthy Bumblebee line, a line solely focused on celebrating Bumblebee. The figure is a repaint of the Age of Extinction Deluxe High Octane Bumblebee, but now with much brighter yellow. But sadly, nothing has changed, and the engineering on this figure is way below the Studio Series standard. So unless you need Stinger, you can skip this, or just get the original to supplement it, because it's the exact same figure. And honestly, the brighter yellow does not improve it that much. So yeah, this year was very bad. Over half the line was 86. We only had 9 figures, technically 10, thanks to 77 being number before 78 and 79, even though he was released the following year. But still, 7 of those 10 are repaints. The only new molds fully are Dino, the Jolt, and the Starscream. The rest are repaints or remolds. But thankfully, next year is introducing the Legacy line. So it'd be cool to see some movie figures in there since, G1's in both lines. So why not throw the movie figures in there too? And also the core class assortment, which was introduced in the Kingdom line, is being introduced into the Studio Series line. So we'll finally have some pocket-sized Transformers to go with the movie display, which will be nice for smaller characters, but since they aren't numbered, I'll have to include them at the end of the year. 80 starts off with a Bumblebee movie figure, that being Brawn, a character seen very briefly at the start of the film, and not again. The Figure looks very accurate to the CGI render I just showed, though the vehicle mode does look very weird to me. Though that's just because it's Cybertronian, I still don't know what to really make of it. I can't tell if it's supposed to be a tank or a drill. But beyond that, the figure has decent articulation, but the transformation is pretty simple because the vehicle is not much to begin with. So overall, I'm not really a fan of it, as I don't really like the G1 type designs, but if you do, I think this is probably a pretty good figure to track down. G1 is another Bumblebee movie figure. This time it is Wheeljack, who was also on the Cybertron opening. The robot mode looks very accurate to the character in the film, which is good, because I think this design is a lot nicer than Bronze was, and also, more importantly, the vehicle mode looks very comprehensible, looking much more like an Earth vehicle instead of a weird Cybertronian one. Beyond that, the figure has very good articulation, and the transformation is pretty fun, and while still being somewhat complex, which I really like. And so yeah, this is one of the best deluxes so far for the Bumblebee movie, so I hope this continues. 82 is another Bumblebee movie figure. Alright, this is Ratchet from the opening scene again. Strange. The figure looks decently accurate to the film, and by extension the G1 cartoon, because that's what the film's design is based on. The figure does transform into what appears to be some sort of Cybertronian van, which looks better than Bronze vehicle at the very least. Beyond that, the transformation is a little bit hard, as the arms have a trouble lining up sometimes. And also the figure suffers from pretty bad QC on some copies where the hips can be very loose. So overall, he's kind of alright, but I'd still say Wheeljack is better. 83 is yet another Bumblebee movie figure from the opening scene. This time it's Soundwave. The figure looks very accurate to how the CGI model for the character, which is good, because that was one of the ones I actually really liked. He does feature an opening chest gimmick like his G1 namesake, but sadly no cassette tapes are included for this figure. Now, where this figure falls is the transformation. It is very complex, and you end up with whatever this is. The box says hover tank. Does not look like a hover tank. That looks like a pair of binoculars that you'd hold. I've heard some people say it's the Green Goblin glider, but that's a disgrace to the actual Green Goblin glider. So yeah, this figure fails as a Transformer, but as a robot action figure, I think it's one of the best in the line. But that's not what you buy a Transformer for. You buy them for the transformation, and that fails. So unless you get this for a good deal, or you're just fine leaving them in robot mode forever, then that's up to you. 4 is, say it with me now, another Bumblebee figure from the Cybertron opening. This time it is Ironhide. Now, if this figure looks familiar to you at all, that is because it is identical to the 82 Ratchet, just with a new head and somehow even worse QC, as he is almost always a floppy mess. So if you don't own Ratchet and you want Ironhide instead, I recommend you also buy some joint tightener, as you are going to need it. 5 is another gosh darn Bumblebee movie. Oh my god, this... Come on, Hasbro. This is RC. Figure looks accurate to her film design and by extension G1. But they forgot to paint her eyes, so her face looks very, very weird. Beyond that, her transformation is surprisingly decent, which is uncommon for G1 looking RCs. And her vehicle mode is some sort of Cybertronian motorcycle. It looks kind of weird, but I've seen worse. So yeah, overall this figure is pretty decent, but come on, Hasbro, enough with the Bumblebee movie releases. We never had this many back-to-back releases. 86 does not actually exist in the line because of the G1 toy line, so 87 is next. And oh my gosh, it's not from the Bumblebee movie. But it is still a Bumblebee. But thankfully, I'm just happy to have something different. It's Dark of the Moon Bumblebee this time. The figure looks very good, but it is basically identical to 49 and 74. But now he has an unmasked head, some different paint, and the vehicle mode also has a spoiler. Overall, though, any of those molds are pretty good. They're all about the same in quality, so just pick which one you like the most. Personally, I'd probably say 87 just because of the spoiler in the car mode. I think that looks really cool, and also I like the unmasked head. 88 continues the Bayverse train, this time with Revenge of the Fallen Sideways. This character is briefly in the film, and you never really get a solid look at his robot mode. You mostly just see him driving away. However, the figure does look very accurate to the promo renders we have which are on the internet. He does have a striking resemblance to Barricade, though the transformation for this figure is very different. And speaking of which, it is much, much better than Barricade, as it's a lot simpler and things tend to go in places without having to be forced in. Overall, I'd say this is an amazing figure, and I am very happy he was made, given how he's about as much screen time as the Bumblebee movie characters. 9 is back to the Bumblebee movie, hopefully not for too long, but this time it is Thundercracker. Figure looks pretty accurate to that render, but he's missing a ton of white, and if he looks familiar, that is because the figure is another repaint of 72 Starscream, this time with Thrust's head. So, it's a decent figure still. There's not much more I can really say on him, so let's move on to the next figure. He was another one I was really happy to see them do and pull off very well. It's Age of Extinction Galvatron. The robot mode looks very, very accurate, minus some paint missing, but that's excusable for budgets. Now, surprisingly, the figure does actually have a very clean profile, and back especially, which is very shocking because the original had the entire truck on the back. Speaking of the transformation, in the film, we don't see him transform properly. He is relying on this thing called transforming, which means when he transforms, he breaks into tiny little cubes and then reforms into the truck. But surprisingly, the figure actually has a manual transformation, and the truck mode looks pretty good. And even more shockingly, the transformation is not overly complicated. It's pretty fun. And so, yeah, I'd say Galvatron's one of the best Voyagers in the line, simply for how impressive he is as a figure on his own. 91 is the sole leader for the mainline studio series this year, and it's The Fallen, one of the most requested characters since the line began. Figure was one everyone was waiting for, and he does not disappoint, being very, very tall, and it looks amazing. The figure comes with his command staff, which can split into two pieces to plug into either of his hands, and he also has a removable face to replicate that one very funny scene from the movie where Optimus tells him to give him his face and rips it right off. The transformation is very simple, which is good because the vehicle mode is kind of a weird looking thing, though I'm kind of into it because it does look very alien in design, and that's what I like. So overall, I can't have any complaints with this figure. He looks exactly like what we always wanted the Fallen to look like in this line. And I'm so happy they finally got to make him after nearly 5 years. 92 continues the Bayverse love, this time giving the Last Knight some love with Crosshairs. Character from the film is known to have a unique trench coat design, which makes figures of him very bad in robot mode usually. But this figure handles it the best and does look very good. And it does look like he's pretty static in the stock renders, but he's actually very posable. Transformation is mostly a shell former due to the way the cloak is formed. However, it's pretty decent, though do be careful, as the back part of the trench coat, which is also the hood of the car, likes to pop out a lot and is on a clear ball joint, so do be careful. Overall, though, the figure looks very nice and is pretty posable, which is surprising. I honestly recommend him. It's nice to see these Bayverse designs from the last two films getting some love. 93 continues that love with the Last Knight Hot Rod. The figure was even better than Crosshairs, as he looks accurate to his film design, doesn't have such a unique design component like the trench coat to get in the way of his articulation, making him very, very posable, to the point where he's probably one of the most posable Bayverse figures since the Optimus Primes. The transformation is also pretty decent, which is good, and the Lambo mode looks very cool. Overall, I'd say Hot Rod is one of the best looking figures of the year, and definitely the best of the Bayverse Deluxes that came out this year, even better than Sideways. So yeah, 2022 was definitely better than 2021, though I will say the year started off badly by having 6 Bumblebee movie figures in a row. If they divided that up, it would have been a lot better, because then we wouldn't feel so repetitive, especially with 86 still being half the line. So early on in the year, if you didn't like the G1 type designs, you were out of luck. 2022 also introduced the core class assortment, which was mostly 86 for the first year, but talking about the 3 that weren't, Bumblebee movie Shockwave looks pretty good and is fun to transform, but is very size inaccurate. Ravage from the Bumblebee movie is a lot more size accurate and can transform into a box to fit into the Bumblebee movie Soundwave's chest. The final one is Dark of the Moon Laser Beacon Bumblebee Disguise, which is a cool novelty, though the figure has some pretty bad QC in the arms that cause them to pop off. So overall, not a bad start to core class, but hopefully it's better next year. Also next year, we are getting the Rise of the Beast film, which is fine. I'm excited, because the Bumblebee movie figures didn't come out a lot at once until recently, so that's good. At least it won't take over half the line like 86 did. Speaking of sublines, though, like 86, we also are getting Gamer Edition, which is cool because the Transformers games have a lot of designs, especially for the movies. So I'm curious to see what they start with. Oh, it's War for Cybertron. Well, that's cool. Though I question why that's not in Legacy. If, that's designed to celebrate the Legacy, this kind of just feels like a little bit of a waste. But maybe it'll be good. Hopefully this doesn't take on an 86 situation. And let's see what happens in 2023 next time.